Hello, friends. Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Tattooed Biker here with you. Because, well, during the Winter Solstice, it was tradition to sit around the fires, built to ward off the darkness with the Yule Log, and celebrate the rebirth of the sun. Us humans haven't changed all that much in several thousand years, and a person's physical reaction to a harmless scare, elevated heart rate, endorphin rushes caused by adrenaline, is still essentially the same. The reaction to hearing a creepy story around a burning Yule fire became a tradition. A feeling of warmth and group bonding at what was the coldest and darkest part of the year. That being said, tonight, in the spirit of Christmas, I bring you 4 true, chilling tales of cryptids and other high strangeness sent in to me from viewers. So for this Yule season, you can relax in the glow of the Yule log with friends and family, and perhaps consider something to send a chill down your spine that isn't necessarily from the weather. It is one of the oldest traditions, after all. And as Dickens reminds us, let us keep Christmas well. Number 1. Dear TB, my family owns a farm right alongside of an Indian reservation. One winter, I was home for Christmas, taking care of the farm while my parents were away Christmas shopping. As I was home by myself, way late in the night, and I hear all our cows start freaking out. I knew it had to be the wild dogs that are rampant in the area. So I throw on some boots, grab a shotgun, load it up, and head out into the field. This was a perfect scenario for a horror movie. It was cloudy, but there was full moon, and it was breaking through the clouds, making it just right to light up all the snow. I ran out into the middle of the field, and just in time I see 2 giant dogs. They were standing up, facing each other and fighting. I think, well, perfect, a 2 for 1. So I pump a shell into the chamber of the 12 gauge, and then it happened. The 2 dogs heard the rack. They both stopped, looked over at me, and then ran away, on their hind legs like a person. I immediately froze, and every ghost story about skinwalkers and all the other native legends I grew up with went flying through my mind. Keep in mind, I'm a white guy. And up until then, these were all just boogeyman stories the native kids like to tell to scare us. But that night, they became real to me. Thanks for reading. Signed, Alan. Number 2. Hey Biker, I saw something several years ago. I recently found your channel and I thought I could share this with you. So let's go back to 2001. I was 21 at the time, working in a hotel bar some 10 miles from my home. This was on the 24th of December. Yes, I had to work that night. Hotel was open and I was the new kid on the job, so I had to. I closed the bar at 2 a.m., went to change my clothes, and went to my motorcycle. It was really cold at the time, so sometimes I would take a very narrow country road that cut my trip almost in half, which was only used by residents of the few houses that lived up through there. I used it because I could exit the main road on the motorcycle and a car could not. It was me and my friend from work on my motorcycle. After maybe a mile on the said road, in the middle of nowhere near one of the houses, I saw something when passing by the house gate. I then stopped maybe 60 to 80 feet from it. We both looked back and there it was. Like straight out of a movie. The typical Hollywood alien. It looked to be around 6.5 to 7 feet tall. Gray skin, the oval face, and the dark eyes. It was the complete thing. We stared at it for maybe 10 seconds as it stared back at us with those pitch black eyes. I then proceeded to just get the hell out of there. We then both agree that it had to be just a guy in a costume. For the next few years, I've told this to some close friends and family, just like I'm telling you here. We then went on to get separate jobs, but I would occasionally see my friend, and we would always share a laugh about it, but we would always say, "What was a dude in an alien costume doing at 2 a.m. on Christmas out in the middle of nowhere?" Now that I'm 36 years old, and I'm a science kind of guy, I don't believe that we are alone, but I find it hard to believe 99% of the stuff we read. I still like to think that it was just a guy in a costume, but I will forever wonder about that night. Well, that is my story. English is not my first language, so I'm sorry for any mistakes. Thank you for reading this. Signed, Emil. Number 3. Hey TB. This story took place when I was 17. Christmas. For 2 weeks, my dad and I had decided to spend Christmas with our family, as I had always dreamed. He booked our tickets, and 2 months later, we were on a plane to London. After our 8-hour plane ride, we were safely in London, despite my anxiety, and my uncle was there to drive us to the countryside, which took about 4 hours overall, as we ended up visiting family on the way to the countryside, food stops, and a couple of toilet breaks. We finally made it to Helston, Cornwall, for the remainder of the 2 weeks. I would be staying alone with my wonderful grandparents, and my dad would be staying with his brother and his brother's now ex-wife. Most of what I remember from the trip was exploring Helston, Toronto, eating a lot of Walker crisps, illegally drinking alcohol in pubs because nobody ever asked for my ID, and going clothes shopping. I remember getting an eerie feeling almost the moment I got there. I had felt that way when I was at my grandparents' house 2 summers before that, and the many other homes I visited, as plenty of those homes are fairly old. I remember falling asleep many times, and I've had this unnerving notion that someone was staring at me, or those random brushes of cold air when I would be lying in bed or making food in the kitchen. I never mentioned anything. If I ignored it, it would go away, right? Well, you're right, it didn't. I felt safer with my door closed because it felt like someone was standing down the short but dark hallway leading to the living room. I would hear random noises almost every night, but I put it to the fact that maybe I was just hearing my grandparents talk in their sleep, or because the house was old, that the house was settling, or some other such nonsense. Despite the weird feelings I was getting almost 24/7, I tried to ignore them, and did so successfully. It all came to a head, though, when on New Year's Eve, I returned home at around 2:50 a.m. I was really hungry, as my cousins threw a few frozen pizzas in the oven, and I won't touch that stuff. I had a few beers early on in the night, and I had 2 after midnight, so me seeing things wasn't so out of the realm of possibility. I got this craving for a ham sandwich. I put the rest of my beers in my room, dressed in my PJs, and headed off for the kitchen. Besides the kitchen, there was this little sunroom that would lead out back. There was a top level and a bottom level. The top level was open, but my grandparents were keeping the bottom level locked, as it was far too cold, and the heating was practically non-existent in the bottom level. The kitchen was lit up, but the top level of the sunroom was almost completely dark. As I was making my sandwich, I casually looked to the right as I was buttering my bread. In the corner of my eye, I saw what looked like a tall, yet hunched over figure. At first, I believed that I was just being paranoid, but I put my things back into the fridge, and when I turned, the figure was still there. Anyone who hears this, has anyone ever played Left 4 Dead? Does anyone remember the witch? Well, this strange, shadowy creature looked like a tall, dark version of the witch. I couldn't make out any noticeable facial features, only a bony figure with long and bony fingers. The creature had long, almost stringy hair. It was almost as if the lights were beginning to dim just by the creature being there, and I swear it was somehow moving closer, but I hadn't seen one of its ginormous legs move even once. I could feel my heart beating incredibly fast, as it is now while I type this, because I can still remember that feeling, and I still fear that I will see this creature again. I turned around, sandwich in hand, and quickly ran to my room. I felt a little nauseous and could barely finish my sandwich. I just wanted to go to bed so that it could be daylight once again, and that if I was going to be killed, I'd hopefully be asleep if any strange demon decided it wanted me as a snack. I was only going to be sleeping there for 2 more nights. I just had to get past it and stay strong. I didn't see the creature again during the rest of my stay there. I tried to get out of that house as much as I could, and was pretty successful in doing so. The last creepy thing happened when I was laying in bed at around 4 a.m. We had a flight around noon, so I had to be up early for the long drive, and since the weather was terrible, we wanted to leave early. I remember talking to my friend on Facebook, and I was talking about how scared I was of the flight. She told me that I was going to be fine, that I wasn't going to die, and that I'd be safely at home in no time. When she told me that I wasn't going to die, it was like my body was being taken over, and I said out loud, "But I'm already dead." I told my dad what happened a few days after we got home. He said that maybe I saw an angel of death or something. I don't have a clue. I was, and still am, extremely freaked out, as it just might be one of the most terrifying experiences I've ever had with something that was clearly paranormal. The only reason I think it's real is because usually when I'm tipsy, I don't tend to really take much notice of things. But when I saw this thing, it was like I'd been snapped back to reality, and I couldn't even feel the alcohol I'd been drinking before. I'm sure there must be some sort of explanation. Perhaps I was just feeling the effects of the alcohol, or maybe I was tired, and all that added up to a very, very creepy hallucination. But I really don't know. Signed, Brienne. Number 4. Dear Biker, I had a weird experience several years ago. I will gladly retell everything that happened that night. I was the only one that seen anything because I was alone with my 6-year-old son who was sleeping. It took me a long time to ever tell anyone, because I really don't want anyone else I know to hear about this, and I knew it would have been better had someone been with me. There are a couple of issues that I'm having a hard time explaining. That's when I found this channel and decided to submit my experience. It was Saturday, December 23rd, 2006. I had just left my cousin's Christmas party at 10 p.m. She lives a few miles down the road, and it takes roughly 15 to 20 minutes to get to the stables from her house. The stables sit in the back of a neighborhood, near a water facility, off a winding dirt road barely wide enough for 2 cars to pass each other. I can't remember if it was a full moon or not, but if it wasn't, it was close, because the moon was bright that night. From the moment I turned onto the dirt road, I felt as if I was being watched. I'd felt this many times before, but just shook it off as I did this night. I'm not easily scared by being alone, and I've always liked being at the barn and with the horses by myself. There are lots of wild animals, deer, armadillos, rabbit, and so forth in the area, and usually when I feel I'm being watched, I will see deer standing just behind some trees, or maybe about to cross the road, or maybe waiting for me to leave so they can graze in the common area. My 6-year-old son was asleep in the car, so I took care of the horse as quickly as possible to get him home. It only took me at the most 10 minutes to feed and water him that night. As I left the stables, I still had a strong feeling of being watched. We received a lot of rain in the days before, and the road was very muddy, and it even washed away in places. The road was in such bad condition you had to drive just about the entire length of the road with your foot on the brake. The road has several curves in it, most of them being near the stables. There is an S-curve with a large section of straight road just after it with another small curve just before you reach the main road into the neighborhood. As I came out of the curve, I immediately spotted 2 red dots about 5.5 feet above the ground. My first thought was of a deer about to cross, but afterwards I knew that couldn't be it. The red was too red. So I came to the conclusion it was an opossum, maybe sitting on a tree branch. The whole time my attention was on the 2 red dots, trying to figure out what it was I was seeing. As I got closer, I realized it couldn't be an opossum because the dots had taken the form of teardrops, and there were no tree branches hanging for it to sit on. As I neared the last curve in the road, I had to come to almost a complete stop, because there was a dip with an immediate incline of approximately 6 to 8 inches. It was standing at the edge of the trees, which lined both sides of the road, about 7 feet away from the car on the driver's side. Using the height of my car, it was about 5.5 to 6 feet tall, completely black except for the eyes. It was very skinny and had 1 thumb and 2 finger-like appendages. Although I never seen it move, it was facing me the whole time as I passed it. As far as its head, it was wide at the top and very narrow at the bottom. The face was very hard to make out. The harder I tried to get a good look at it, the harder it was to make anything out. It was as if the blurring was intentional the harder I looked at it. Just as I passed it, I rounded the last curve. I came to a complete stop and put my car in reverse, intending to go back and try and get another look at it. However, I decided against it, put my car back in gear, turned off the dirt road onto the main road. I've never seen anything out there since, nor have I had any more feelings of being watched while out at the stables. Thanks for reading. Signed, Anonymous. And there it is. 4 tales of true unexplained encounters with cryptids and other high strangeness. As we wrap up this Christmas special, I want to take a moment to wish each and every one of you a joyous holiday season. May your days be merry, your nights be full of wonder, and your encounters remain on the lighter side of strange. Thank you all for joining me on this chilling journey. Remember to stay curious, stay kind, and stay safe. From the very bottom of my biker heart, have a happy and hauntingly memorial holiday season, and I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker, out.